this. Hopefully I'm going to be hitting record. I am hitting record. Hello everyone and welcome to tonight's CBAA webinar brought to you with the support of the Community Media Training Organisation. Tonight's topic, finding skilled volunteers. Finding volunteers for your station can be a challenge, especially if you're in a regional area or you struggle to bring young people in through the door. Tonight's webinar aims to teach you practical skills you can use in the recruiting and training processes, as well as for once they're through the door. Hoping to get these presenters to stick around. In this session, you will learn tips for recruiting and training, documenting personnel needs and developing suitable tasks and processes, where to build community connections to help you find volunteers, both young and old, and how to keep skilled volunteers. No, we don't want to go to that one yet. How do I go backwards on this thing? This is being recorded too, I should point out. So the fact that I'm unable to use PowerPoint will be something that's there for future generations to enjoy. I should point out that tonight's webinar is presented by Christy Mann, who's been working in corporate communications and marketing for 8 years, landed in the media arena in 2015, almost as a newsreader, is now the communications manager for 965 in Brisbane, has built a robust and effective internship/volunteer program that has seen great success across the organisation. We're very lucky to have Christy here with us this evening. She's with us right now. I've just unmuted you, Christy, and I will also make you the host so that you can show us your screen and we can have that as well. And I certainly trust that you have more proficiency in using PowerPoint than I do.
Well, let's hope so, Danny. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here to, I guess, share a little bit of what we've learned across the path of including volunteers in our organisation. And as the little wonderful bio from Danny said, we have had some really good successes in this area, and it is exciting to share those with you. So Danny's given a little bit of a bio about our organisation and a little bit about me. I actually started as a volunteer at 965 about 10 years ago, that ripe age when you finish school and you're scrambling for things to do. And here I am about 10 years later as a full-time employee. We have a really wonderful legacy here at 965. We started 40 years ago, and when we started, we were exclusively volunteer run and operated. And now down the track, we've got about 20 paid employees, mixture of full-time, part-time, and we've got 7 to 10 volunteers on a regular basis weekly, which surges during our 2 on-air fundraisers each year. Plus our uni interns, 3 of which we've welcomed this week. So it's been a busy week here in the office, and also our work experience program. So volunteers are hugely integral to our organisation, and the last couple of years especially, we've really built on what we've learned and put it into practice with some really good results. So yeah, very, very important to who we are. Very, very important to who we are as an industry as well. So with that little introduction over the way, we'll get to move on. And Danny, I hope my skills are up to scratch in terms of PowerPoint. So the first slide here, there we go. So I guess there's 3 real steps. I mean, we talk a lot about finding volunteers and where to find skilled volunteers. But I guess there's a step beforehand that we've found really, really beneficial, and that is preparing first. So preparing before anyone walks in the door. It's not too late if you've got volunteers coming out of your ears, or you are a volunteer yourself. It's not too late. These steps can be put in place at any time. So preparation first, then we've got to find them, and then the key to all of this is how do we keep them. So they're the 3 sort of points that I really want to talk through with you guys tonight. And yeah, feel free to throw any questions up there. If they relate to where we are, I'll try and answer them as we go. And yeah, we'll go from there. So preparing first. It's a really, really well-known quote but it really is so true. And that is, by failing to prepare, we are preparing to fail, rather. So by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. So we've got a few pointers here. These are 6 things that have really helped us kind of get our systems in place before we even have a volunteer walk in the door. These guys in the top right-hand corner, these are 2 of our volunteers. They are wonderful. Hang on. Bill's just raised his hand there. Bill will work out how to throw to you in a minute. But yeah, we've got 2 volunteers up there. That's Mark and Barbara. They come in and sit on the phones during our on-air fundraising appeals twice a year. They've been coming for quite a few years now regularly, and they're so proficient now that we just shoot them an email when we say, hey, you guys are up for this this June or this November? And they're like, yep, count us in. Here's the days we can come in. So that's just a little, I've thrown a few pictures of our current volunteers in there just to give a few faces behind what we're doing here. So back onto the list. The first point is work out what your organisation needs. The fact that we need people, and that is a really common term that's thrown out there, simply needing people isn't enough. Sit down and work out what your station needs. Do they need on-air talent? Do they need support off-air and administration? Do you need help with your website? Do you need help with your social media? From there, we kind of look at, is it a skilled or an unskilled position? So if it's a skilled position, either you find someone with the skills or you accept volunteers based on the resources you have in those areas to train them. For example, your on-air announcers, obviously having someone on air that has the time and the resources to train them is really important. So it's really worth, if it is a skilled position, either finding someone with the skills or allocating the resources to train them in those skills. So the other point that we've found really helpful is actually determining the time frame for what we need that volunteer to do. Is it an ongoing task, something that they can come in a day a week ongoing, or is it actually a project? Is it a short-term project? Is it a long-term project? That kind of thing is really easy. When you get people that come in your door, and I'll talk about this a little later, they will also have a time frame. So it just helps to discuss those things right up front, work out whether that's going to work for the organisation, and then you can fit the right person to that. The 4th one is writing out a task list. For what we call our unskilled volunteers, so people that come in and just happy to do anything, we actually have a task list that's ready to go. So people within our organisation are adding tasks to that. As they find something that could be done by a volunteer, it gets added to that list, and that's just a Google document on the Google Drive. So again, with the skilled positions, so for example, we've actually got volunteers, actually we've just lost one volunteer. She's gone to YWAM in Hawaii to train for the Mercy Ship. But we had a social media volunteer who would come in a day a week, and she literally had a checklist that she would go through when she came in the morning about moderating our Facebook, creating content, having a look at our website, seeing what could be done there. And yeah, having the task list, one, made it really easy to train her and get her proficient because you actually had what she needed to learn. And the other thing is she knew exactly what she was doing each morning when she came in on her volunteering day. So writing out the task list and actually writing down the process. The volunteers that we have to come in and do some database or back-end or administration work, we've actually got that. It's even as simple as half a page or even a couple of lines, just making sure that they know exactly what they're doing and you know that the job's going to be done properly when they come in the door. The 5th one on this list is paperwork. We treat our volunteers very, very similarly to how we treat an employee, actually almost identically. So all of our volunteers fill out an application form which covers all of their personal details, their availability, why they're wanting to volunteer at our organisation, what kind of skills they bring with them, and a couple of referees. I'll cover this a little bit later about why we do that and why that's so important. But the other sort of paperwork that we have in preparation for volunteers is a volunteer manual. So the volunteer manual is basically taken from our employee manual minus the information they don't need, and it actually has an agreement at the back that they sign off and agree to when they come and volunteer. So things like the policies that they might need to adhere to in terms of the social media, website, conduct, what our values are, and the fact that they agree to work within those values and support those values. That kind of thing is really important. It also comes back to accountability. So just like an employee, this is almost their, I guess, contract that they would sign when they're coming in the organisation. Danny mentioned the CBAA's rights and responsibilities of volunteers that they've got, and I think he's going to put a copy to it in the information with this presentation. But that they actually have an example of the kind of agreement and the kind of, I guess, values that the companies agrees to treat the volunteer with, and that the volunteer agrees to give back to the company. It's actually a really, really good starting point if you don't have a document like that. But yeah, so just starting with what you've got, even something simple, doesn't have to be rocket science. And I've got I'll show you where you can actually see our application form in case you want to kind of take that as a basic point. And then the next one is making sure you've got some way of storing your volunteers' information and details. Contact details, skills, availability, that kind of thing is really important, because once you've built a database of volunteers that have already come and worked for the organisation, if you've got a particular project or need them to come back and have something specific for them to do, you can actually just shoot an email out based on the skills you know that they have, and say, hey, we've got this opportunity, what's your availability like? So that's kind of a list of 6 things that we've built pretty much around, we've had, like every organisation that works with volunteers, and actually any organisation that works with people, we've had some phenomenal experiences and we've had a lot of challenges. So some of these points, and I'll come to a little bit later, have actually stood us in good stead in terms of defining how we treat our volunteers, what we expect from our volunteers, and the accountability that comes around that. Right, and the reason we're all here, finding skilled volunteers. So this is something that sometimes does take time to build, and I just want to preface that right at the forefront. When you find someone good, we hang on to them as long as we possibly can, and I'm sure that will resonate with all of you. But I've just added these little quotes through here because I really do think that they're so important. And a person who feels appreciated will always do more than what's expected. And we've certainly found that through the course of some of our volunteers. These 2 young ladies up in the top right-hand corner, the one on the right is the one who's just gone off to work on the Mercy ship and is currently being trained up. So she's come in here to volunteer, and she's gone off to volunteer full-time, which is pretty awesome. And the other one on the left is Amber. She actually did one of her university internships with us and has gained full-time employment in a marketing position. So, yeah, finding skilled volunteers. The first thing that I guess we start with is our station. We start with the people that are closest to us. We're radio stations, and our radio stations have people that know us, love who we are, and know what we do. So we actually start first and foremost, if we're looking for a particular volunteer or to recruit a group of volunteers for a specific project, this is where we start. So we actually, very similar to if we had a paid position going, we create a promo that outlines what we're looking for. So yeah, something along the lines of outlining the skills, making it sound like what it would be like to work in the organisation. So for us, that's super fun and yeah, just personalising a little bit so they get a bit of your personality in there. And then once you've created that promo, I guess that's going to air on your station. We then make sure that the details are on our website. So I'm just going to pull up here if I can. So in terms of our website, we always have a web page dedicated to volunteers. So I guess that throughout the year, we get a number of applications through people who've been looking through our website and have come across this page and gone, yep, I've got some time to volunteer. So I'm just going to show you this permanent page on our website now. So here it is. So it just gives a little bit of background about who we are, the fact that we really, really appreciate volunteers, that we are a volunteer-based organisation in that we started with volunteers right back in the beginning as an exclusive volunteer organisation. It's got our volunteer application form there, and then the types of volunteering that they can do. So we offer university and TAFE internships. That's been a really valuable source of skilled volunteers for us. We also offer schoolwork experience and then just normal volunteering. I'll come to that a little bit later, but if you want to have a look at our application form a little later, it's all there on our website, and I'm sure we can include the URL to that. But yeah, so along with your permanent page set up for your volunteers, we also put the specific positions that we're looking for or specific projects that we're looking for volunteers on our homepage. We make sure the application form is there and that all the links are working and the details on who to send it to is really clear. And then we use our social platforms to spread the word. So that's using the URL just to put something up on Facebook, or creating some fun little graphics with a URL in the intro. But yeah, we very much treat it almost like a campaign when we've got to recruit volunteers and or we're looking for someone specific. We also email people in our database, and we have included it in our printed newsletter if you do one of those. So that's one kind of avenue that we've found really, really successful, and that is working out who you need or a position that your organisation needs, and then recruiting for that position just like you would a paid position. So I guess you're kind of probably sitting there thinking, that's fantastic, is it going to work? And I guess that's the age-old question, and coming from a marketing background, test it and see how it goes. If it's not working, try something different. But with volunteers and people, just like if you're applying for a job and jobs are changing all the time, new jobs are appearing all the time, we don't know who's out there listening to our station or reading our website. So keep trying, and if it doesn't work right now, it doesn't mean that it's not going to work. The other test and see how it goes is just make sure your links are working, the application form is self-explanatory, and it's clear on who to send it to. So the next place, and I guess this is kind of along the lines of looking within people that know who we are and love what we do, is kind of going that next step, and that's going to your current staff and volunteers and saying, hey, do you know someone? It's incredibly interesting to see that sometimes people can come to you when you least expect it. And I guess giving your staff and current volunteers the opportunity to know that you're looking for someone in a particular area is really important. For example, we had one of our staff members have a friend that he has, and he's actually a journalist and had been made redundant. And he sort of came back into the office and said, oh, can you kind of use Warren's skills? He's a journalist. He would be happy to come in and do some writing for us and do some content for our website. And that, I guess that's an example of things that can come out of the blue. And yeah, Warren's still with us. He loves coming in every week. He wants to keep a foot in the door. He's not quite sure if there's a change in career for him, but at the moment it's really working for us and it's really working for him. So yeah, just putting it out there, having your staff and your volunteers being on the lookout for people that might be able to come in and do some work with your organisation. The other thing that's been really successful for us is actually work experience, schoolwork experience. Now, we typically take the schoolwork experience kids for a week, but what we've found is once they've graduated school and they're in uni, they're wanting to keep a bit of a foot in the door because they're interested in radio. Radio is a bit of one of those buzzwords. Just seems to attract people. It's really quite phenomenal. Coming from a corporate background, it's been really exciting to see how that works. But our work experience students, we've had a lot come back to become regular volunteers, and then again turning up as a part-time or a casual employee down the track. The other thing with high schools, if you've got a local high school nearby, is most of them now have media as a subject. A lot of them also have a radio school or a little pop-up radio program that goes over the loudspeakers at lunchtime. Approaching the school to see if you could strike up a partnership or whether there's a particular project you might have that the students can work on. It's a great way to do up a proposal, or if you've got a campaign that you're wanting to run or a program that you're needing some research for. It can be amazing what comes out of those partnerships sometimes. The other one is TAFE reskilling programs. So most communities have a form of this, and Work for the Dole or upskilling programs helping people to re-enter the workforce. Just tapping into them, excuse me, tapping into those programs and maybe seeing if they've got someone who wants to come in a day a week to get some more experience or ongoing experience before they step back into the workforce. The next one, university internships. This has actually proven to be the most successful for us in the last sort of 18 months to 2 years. As I said earlier, we've just had 3 new interns join us. These are 3rd year, 4th year students, and it can be, if you've got a university nearby, it's as simple as approaching the university and saying, hey, we've got the ability to take university interns in these areas. So for us, that's kind of been the marketing, communications, promotions, media and video areas. They come very savvy, very technically savvy. You don't have to show them how to use a computer. They are at the end of their degrees, so their technical knowledge is really good in those areas and they're really willing to learn. So we've had great success in that, and we've even had an intern. She's actually starting full-time work next week, but she's been volunteering after her internship for 2 days a week. She's actually a HR graduate, and she's been updating all of our policies and procedures in those 2 days a week. So, yeah, we've had some great success there getting some skilled volunteers. The next area is something that we would all use. To my knowledge, this is something that's used often, but I thought it was worth mentioning, and that is, who do you know that's skilled in their field that you can use on and off air? We've got a lot of experts. We've got a financial guy who's doing some specific budget, family planning content for our on-air in small spots. We've also got some content contributors that are writing articles for our website. So they can be, they're anyone from psychologists who are doing specific parenting or how to get your teens through teenager years, or how to manage screen time for small children. For us, because we're a family-based and a family values-based station, that kind of content has been really key. And it comes all fairly much pre-prepared and just attributing their authorship. It's great value to our audience, our listeners, as well as our online audience. So there's a couple of ways that we've found our volunteers, and that's been really, really successful. The important next steps, I guess, that once we've got some volunteers, we actually take them through this next process. And if I can say anything, this has probably been the most important step in working out who's going to fit within our organisation and our culture, and being able to have really frank discussions with people when it's not working out, which does happen. We're all aware that that happens, and that can happen for a variety of reasons, and I'll touch a little bit on that later. But these are the next steps that we take. So as I mentioned before, all of our new volunteers have to fill out the application form. We follow up on the referees, their character referees. We populate our database with their information, along with their skills, why they're wanting to volunteer at the station. We then actually get them in for an interview. And this is very much like our paid staff. We have a list of interview questions that covers a little bit more in detail why they're wanting to volunteer at the station, what kind of skills, where they're wanting to get experience, what their current situation is, and what kind of time frame that they're sort of looking to volunteer for. If it is for a specific task, going back to that, looking at what your organisation needs, promoting that position, and hopefully getting some good applications in for that, we actually go through the specific task or the position and go through the task list that we've developed for that position. So you can really do a match of skills to the task list and the position, and just make everything really transparent. The next one that's really important is clarifying expectations, both yours or the organisation's, and what theirs are. So things like, what are they hoping to achieve out of volunteering at 96.5? Volunteers come to us for a lot of reasons. It has to be mutually beneficial, and for some people it is actually just the community. They want to come in, they want to be a part of the community. They may not be doing anything else at the moment, and so that personal interaction is really important. They might be in between jobs and they want to just keep a foot in the door, keep their professional skills sharp, and I guess keep some sort of that routine until they find another position. The other one is retirement, and we've actually got some phenomenal volunteers. Rosemary, for us, who comes in on a Wednesday, has had a clerical background. So she's got a great attention to detail, and we've been able to throw a few things her way that we would have had to have had like an administrator or someone really gifted in admin do that work, and that's just been absolute. It's been absolutely amazing. So, yeah, clarifying their expectations and their timeframes about what they want to achieve out of volunteering is really important. And then we actually do the formal appointment, and that's coming back to that volunteer paperwork, the policies that they that are part of working for your organisation or volunteering for your organisation, and we have them sign the agreement. This actually is really good if you're having issues with a volunteer. To be able to have something to refer back to if they're doing things that are outside of what your organisation values are, or they've got to get something in your social media policy. The same risks, I guess, of a paid employee are the same that you have with a volunteer. As I said before, they're all people. So, yeah. And then we actually set up an initial review. So while we're checking in with them and do a lot of initial training the first few times that they come in, we actually do a review to discuss how things are going. And that kind of depends on so with our university interns, it's actually a structured review that happens midway through their internship. For me, though, that's a little bit late. We've already kind of discussed, hey, how's this going? What are you getting experience in the things that you want to get experience in? How's your project that you've been allocated going? And sort of things like that. So those reviews are really important. It can also pick up any things that are a little bit niggly that you need to address, or we kind of do the punctuation. We, with our university interns and work experience, they have a set time that they come and they have a set time that they leave. with our other volunteers, we get a rough idea from them what time they're going to be there. It just helps us to allocate tasks and those kind of things. You know, have your circumstances changed? How's this working for you? Have you got enough training? That kind of thing. Just wondering if there's anything else on that screen that I need to discuss. Good there. So the next step is, and can be probably the most challenging, with volunteers, as I said, they all come for different reasons, which means that volunteers are going to come and go, hopefully way more than your paid staff. We've just had, as I said, one to go after YWAM. We've had people get back into gainfully full-time paid positions. The beauty about all of those is we still see them keep coming back, and they're involved in the station in other ways. So some of what I'm about to share with you about how do you keep them kind of pays dividends way beyond the time that they are with you. And I love this Jack Sparrow quote, good old Pirates of the Caribbean, but not all treasure is silver and gold. So now that we've found them, how do you keep them? This picture on the right-hand side here is actually our brekkie announcer. That's Ken Green. He's been with the station for about 6 years. He's part of our brekkie show. And that's Arche. So Arche and her husband also come in during our fundraising appeals. Love getting on the phones, love talking to the people that phone in and getting their stories. So, yeah. And as you can see there, really strong connection. All of our staff just see our volunteers as part of the team. So it's a lot of fun. But that's kind of leads me into this first point here, and that is we treat our volunteers as an integral member of our team. As in, if they're in the office and our staff are in the office, they are treated exactly the same. So we, those that are regular interns or volunteers with us, they get their own logins to their computer. They know where they know, you know, who sits where, they know what they do. We've gone through all that training. We include them in our staff meetings. We involve them in projects. We allow them to make suggestions and have creative input. I guess a couple of projects that I'll throw in here as examples is one of our uni interns actually set up our Google AdWords. So we didn't have anything about 2 years ago, set up our Google AdWords, applied for the Google AdWords grant. And if you don't have the Google AdWords grant, get onto that. That's phenomenal value, available to not-for-profits. And yeah, went through the grant process of applying for it and got it approved. So that that was allowing her and giving her the responsibility to do that. It was really stretched her, but she was one of the volunteers that came back in after the internship until she got a full-time position. We still keep in touch with her now. Comes in for appeals to help on the days that she can. So it's really paid dividends, giving them some responsibility for something. One of the other ones is we had one of our regular volunteers part of a creative meeting for a billboard campaign that we were running. And this is just one example. I know not everyone's going to be out there doing billboard campaigns, but even if you're wanting to run something creative for Father's Day, or you've got something coming up in programming, just involving them in the process, even if you don't pick their idea, is really important to making them feel appreciated. So, and the other thing that's kind of based into all of this is volunteers don't want to be sitting there with nothing to do. And if they do, you've probably got the wrong people. So, yeah. The next step in that one is equip and train them. So do they have what they need to succeed? Do they know what computers they can log into? Do they have access to the folders that they need to, or the programs that they need to be able to do what you've asked them really efficiently and really effectively? The other thing we do, which is probably the hardest thing out of all of it, probably the hardest thing to manage, if I could be really candid, and I'm sure you'll all agree, is actually investing that time. We're all time poor, and having 3 interns start this week has really tested my workload, but investing the time to train them well pays dividends in the long run. It increases their ability to work autonomously, or I can't say that word. I'm not an on-air person, okay, so you'll have to forgive me. It increases their autonomy and basically decreases the time you need to spend with them in the long term. So yeah, I can't encourage you enough to invest the time to train them well. And the other one is pretty self-explanatory as well, but continually check in with them. I'm probably, I guess because I'm a people person, I probably tend to do this a little bit more naturally, but I'm always asking them, how are you going? How was your weekend? How are you finding the work? Do you have enough to do? Do you have any suggestions on feedback on how we can do this better? Always asking for feedback and suggestions, and actually caring about them as a person. We can tend to just call them, volunteers, group them all into the volunteer group, but actually getting to know them as a person, and I guess that's very much ingrained in our culture as an organisation. We kind of band together very much as a family, and volunteers are 100% part of that. But just caring about them as a person, and seeing who they are and what they're doing and what interests them goes a long way. I've included this slide because it's kind of the elephant in the room. Volunteers sometimes don't work out, and I guess my passion behind this is the preparation that we've put in the last couple of years to going through the process, that initial process and preparation with our volunteers when they come in the door, has really paved the way for these conversations. So I've just listed a few reasons there why volunteers sometimes don't work out. Some of these that I've listed here can happen out of the blue, do happen out of the blue. Some of them you can pick up right at the beginning if you've got that process in place. The top one there is the wrong culture fit, that they're just not going to work with your current team or what you're trying to achieve with your audience, your station, your brand. That initial preparation should eliminate quite a few of those. But you get some, I've just listed a few, the wrong attitude, or they become unreliable. Again, going back to that agreement, if you've got the agreement there and you've got a rough, something rough in place, that does allow you to have that accountability conversations. Sometimes tasks change. You might have a project that ends, and that's just about having that open dialogue to have the conversation with them, or if their performance isn't adequate, just being able to have that conversation with them, or you simply don't have the capacity anymore to manage them. I've covered that volunteers they do take a lot of time. We can't do our job without them, but it does take time. And the other thing is just being really gracious and transparent. Being able to have conversations like that has also opened up the doorway for feedback and suggestions back to us. The only way that we improve is to know, in some ways, being open to see what's wrong. So I guess being gracious and transparent all the way through really helps if things don't work out. And if we, like I've said a number of times, we've trained up in Brisbane alone. We've probably got 2 or 3 people that have volunteered or interned sitting in commercial stations right now. And we're really proud of that fact, that we've spent and invested that time to train people that are making a huge difference in the commercial world. And we'd like to think that they take some of the influence that we've had on them with them. That has helped them in their professional careers. But we always send off our volunteers appropriately. We always make a big deal of the impact that they've had on our organisation. Just goes back to the appreciation and making them, totally making them feel a part of the family. But yeah, the preparation you put in early should eliminate a good percentage of the tricky ones early. And that's probably, one of the key things that I thought I'd put in there this evening. So this is just a little thing that I've put in there. Volunteering has to be mutually beneficial. It has to be beneficial for the organisation. It has to be beneficial for the person for lots and lots of different reasons. And it really is about finding the right people for the right seat on the right bus. And that's the formal side of things this evening. I'll get you, Danny, to kind of facilitate if there's any questions out there.
More than happy to do so. Thank you so much for that. That was an absolutely wonderful presentation. I am just going to start throwing some links there into the instant message box for people to check out while they get a chance. The first two are a couple that are up on the CBAA website. They're actually resources developed by the CMTO. Emma Couch, I don't know if you want to respond to the fact that me, on behalf of the CBAA, is taking credit for your fine work. But a couple of documents there about retaining staff and volunteers and also finding volunteers. The links are hopefully showing up there. Feel free to check those out, put them in the old tabs and have a look at them later on. I've also put up there the national standards for volunteer involvement. That is something that's been developed by Volunteering Australia. Don't be put off by the fact that the document says 2015 on it. That's the last time they sort of revisited that document. But the information included there is still up to date. If you want to find out more from Volunteering Australia, it's got a great amount of resources on its website. It's got a little sort of job finder thing for volunteers, so well worth checking out, because I would imagine that they would also be open to people contributing to that. So if you just want to sort of use that as another avenue. And of course, the CBAA Jobs and Volunteers section. Always feel free to utilise that should need be. Happy to put up that for you and try and promote that through our different channels of communication. Also, finally, that link I've put up there is from the Not-for-Profit Law Centre, their Justice Connect arm. It's the Volunteer Induction Checklist. And it's a really fantastic resource, that one. Denise Kuchma asks, "G'day Denise, how are you going? What percentage of your volunteers become members of the station?" I imagine she's asking that of you, Christy, but just I'll respond to that one. In my experience, sort of if you're coming on as a volunteer of a station, part of that process is becoming a member of the station first. I know that's not sort of 100% across the board, but I'd suggest in a lot of cases that that's sort of how it goes. Is that how it is there at 965, Christian?
No, that's not how it is here. So we had a huge member push about 20 years ago when we went for our full-time licence, and a lot of the members that we have are sort of from that process, but it's not, it's compulsory obviously for our board to be members, but not for our staff and volunteers to be members. But I can totally understand in the smaller stations that perhaps gives another level of almost buy-in, I guess, being a member of and a little bit more responsibility, accountability, perhaps.
Yep.
But yeah. Excellent.
And I would encourage everyone to encourage their volunteers to become a member of the station. It's a bloody awesome place to be a part of. Emma Ramsey asks, "How do you tend to coordinate volunteers when they are working on something as a group? Do they do it like I did at university and let them do all the work and then just rock up when the good marks are given out?"
In terms of the projects, I tend to give each intern their own project. So it's kind of more of a one-on-one rather than a group project. The group projects are a little bit hard to manage, and to be honest, with my resources here, I tend to split them on different days because with that, as I talked about with the task list, I then have different people working on that same task list if it's to be done on a daily basis. So, yeah, I hope that kind of was where you were going with that question, Emma.
Excellent. It looks to be that way. John Elias asks, "The process seems to work well if you have paid staff as well as voluntary, like you do at your station, Christy. I'd like to see how you go in a wholly volunteer station situation." Sort of states that the volunteers at his station like to do their shows then depart. I imagine that is something that's shared by a lot of similar stations. John, what would be your tip do you think beyond all that you've taught us here this evening, which has been fantastic, for I guess buy-in is what you call it there for volunteers, for them to sort of have a stake in the station higher than just them doing their program?
Sorry, was that to me, Danny, or John?
Yes.
Yep. I guess we've spent a lot of time sowing the seeds with our staff about investing in new volunteers, and it's all about that shared vision for the station. So if we're all on the same page and working towards the same outcome, I think a lot of that goes a long way to being able to bring people into that and seeing how they can assist. I totally understand that this would be that not everything that I've gone through tonight is going to work. It will work in a different way for each station. I guess if people are passionate about what they do, we see that the desire flows across to wanting to train up the next generation. And we've got both in our organisation in terms of staff. We've got people that prefer to just do their show. We include them in part of that, and I guess we do that in different ways. Part of the induction that they do is they actually sit with each person in our different areas of the organisation to see how it functions. And I understand, because we're a bigger organisation, that's a bit of a broader brushstroke, but even having the volunteers initially sit in on their show kind of makes the other announcers feel a part of what's happening, if they're open to that. But yeah, the vision, the shared vision for the station does go a long way in bringing people together.
Yeah, I find that's always the sort of one of the things that can really take you over the edge there in regards to volunteer involvement, I guess, as well as sort of making sure that volunteers are having fun while they're there at the station. But then again, I'm one of those people who's never had nothing but fun as part of involvement in community broadcasting. I think it must be very lacking in that respect. Ned Smith asks, we here at 5GTRFM have volunteers agreement that also includes what they are required to do over a 3-month period. Do any other stations have something similar? And do you find any issues arising from having something like that? Is that something in net where you sort of, I guess there's a fear that volunteers might sort of see that as being, I guess, something a bit strict? And I guess if a person's volunteering their time to go and work at that station, they also don't want to have to inherit all of these rules with it. I'm just wondering if that's it. If you're still here with us at the moment, if you wouldn't mind sort of putting something in that. I think it's actually a really good idea to have the documentation like that available. And when it comes to that sort of thing, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wrest control of the panel back from yourself, Christy. So I'm going to take it off your wonderful slides that you've got there.
Yep.
The host now, it says. That's a rather intimidating way of saying it. Now, give me the chance to show my screen, because I put up a link there before to Codes of Practice, Community Radio Broadcasting Codes of Practice, Appendix 3. And I will just see if I can show that. There we are. Share that. So that should hopefully be showing up on your screen now. We would obviously encourage people to take advantage of this and use it at their own station there. Just copy and paste that. That's there to meet the requirements of Codes of Practice 2.3, which we'll just have a quick look at now. Oh, what do you know? Geez, that's embarrassing, isn't it? Dead link on the CBAA page. Have to fix that one right up. But yeah, this is something that you can use there at the station. And not only does it sort of set up what the rights and responsibilities of the volunteers are, but it's also the rights and responsibilities of the station to their volunteers. And I tend to think that's a really good thing to include in there, because it shows that it's a bit of a two-way street, the relationship between the station and the volunteers. And Annette's got on there and said, yes, this is correct. We actually have a compulsory volunteers agreement for them to do required hours. I can actually see that as being a good thing. That's probably a similar thing to getting an individual to sign up to be a member. It shows that they've sort of got a stake there in the organisation and are committed. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. I mean, obviously, there's always the chance with any policies and procedures that you institute that someone's going to find fault in them. But I think that's a really good idea, isn't it? John Maisel states group management might depend on whether you have running a creative task, a process task, or a technical task. The latter tends to be variable. I can be creative. and that there is no defined path from here to there. Only some fulfilment there is reached. I handle that by playing coach to the group. Thank you very much, John Mosels. That's the thinking like that is why you should go to his soldering webinar. I don't know if soldering's a team thing or not. I'll tell you what, if anyone can make soldering a team sport, that'd be our friend John Mosels. Indy Wood had a good point in there that I just want to scroll back to. The take-home message for me, says Indy, is that work out what you need and then search for someone to fill that role. As a regional station, we certainly couldn't be that selective and go to that level of recruitment because they'd never get anyone. I mean, Indy is, of course, coming from a smaller community than our metropolitan communities. How would you sort of respond to that sort of thing? Is there sort of, I guess there's always the scope there for if you're getting a volunteer in who's skilled, that you can do a certain amount of training for any vacant positions that you might have?
Yeah, I guess it comes down to, I mean, there are two definitions in radio. There's two definitions. There's two areas. There's on-air and off-air. And what we've found is there's actually more people that want to volunteer off-air, but they perhaps just think as radio as just being on-air. So I guess what I would encourage you to do is kind of look just a little bit beyond, rather than nutting it down and saying, hey, we want someone to answer the phones 5 days a week. That's very specific. But maybe looking at it as, hey, we've actually got, if you're gifted in administration and you're wanting to, you're a mum and you're wanting to reskill to maybe step back into a part-time position, that's kind of the things that, just thinking outside that box. So rather than saying, hey, we're looking for a receptionist a day a week or being that specific, actually just sort of saying we need someone who would like to help us manage the website and social media and help us build that. So putting out that I guess that little carrot of responsibility, that we're not just asking for a volunteer. We're not just asking you to be a person to come into the station to do whatever we want you to do on the day. And I understand that there are those, we all have to do those things that have to be done on the day, but just thinking a little bit more specifically to give people an idea about what they're volunteering for.
Excellent. There's a couple of very practical questions here from practical question from Ruth Price that Bill McGilvray responded to. Say you have an on-air appeal, a person puts their hand up to give a few hours to answer phones as a one-off. Do you go through the full interview process of recruitment?
They actually come in for, so they do the full application form. They do an over-the-phone interview, and we get them in for a group training session beforehand, because obviously they're using our database. There's a bit of a script to run off. So we do that. On the occasion that people can't attend that, we'll organise just an ad hoc one 20 minutes before their shift starts. So it includes a lot of those steps, but they are pared back, and we tend to do things a little bit simpler for that purpose, yes.
And Bill states, if volunteers are not required to be a member, are they covered by insurance? Now, that might go beyond our respective areas of expertise, and that might be one where I need to consult the insurance powers that be, because that is a very, very good point there.
Yeah, beyond my expertise, but I do know that our schoolwork experience students are covered, and they're all under 18. So as far as I'm advised, all of our volunteers, even if they're not members, are covered under insurance. The beauty with the uni interns is they come with their own insurance. So if that is an issue, that kind of clears that one up.
Bill, I would suggest that that's probably an entire webinar in and of itself.
Yes.
And I might put that forward to the powers that be to see if that's maybe something we can look at. And Denise responds to that as well, saying anyone like maintenance people that come onto the premises must be covered by insurance, public liability and indemnity. I will have to do a bit more research on that one and get back to you on that. That is, of course, in this day and age of extensive insurance, be certainly something that I would need to know a bit more about. And obviously that sort of goes beyond volunteers, as people are pointing out there. I'm going to have a bit more of a look at that one. I'm glad you brought that up, Bill.
Good question. There's just another one here, Danny, from Cynthia. What if you don't have enough volunteers to go through the volunteer process? Which is a really, really good question because we are all time poor. I would pare it back, Cynthia, and do what you can do. So even just putting a part of the process in place is, we didn't put the whole process in place from word go. That's been built over a number of years. So I would say do what you're able to do. Maybe start with the CBAA's rights and responsibilities and have a little signing box at the bottom. The application form is a really good one, just in terms of getting at least all of their information and expectations and references.
Excellent. And we're about at 7:25 now. So I was just wondering if anyone's got any final questions, please type them in there really quickly. If anyone needs to access any of the resources that were handed out tonight and can't see them at the moment, just get at me, dchifley@cbaa.org.au, and I will send them to you. I'm going to put my email address in there for you now. You can write for that any time you want, except for the fact that I've spelled it wrong. That's another professional foul by me. That one. Sorry, I was just looking at some questions and wondering whether I'd done them or not. I would like to thank Christy so much for taking her time out to take part in this evening's webinar. It's always fantastic when we have professionals in the field who sacrifice their time so they can come on here and get involved. Christy, if there's any sort of links or anything that you'd like to pop up so people can find out what you're up to, any websites where they can find out more. I did put the link there into the volunteering section.
Oh, great.
The 925 website, but I will also include that as part of materials that we send out to people.
I'll drop my email address in there too, Danny, and if anyone's got any questions they want to ask me directly about any of the programs that we run or the uni interns, I will pop that in there. And
one thing I would respond to that one, that's how I got hooked on this thing called community radio. It's because of the Year 10 work experience. I shudder to think what my life would have been like if I'd chosen to do work experience somewhere else. If I'd chosen to be a professional athlete, like I was threatening to do. I wasn't really threatening to do that. And in addition to the fact that I am going through to dead links, one of the things that is possibly the most important part of this webinar that I forgot to do at the start of it was to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from which we're broadcasting this webinar. That's the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, paying respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extending that also to all of the traditional owners of the land upon which all of our wonderful participants have joined us here this evening. Absolutely wonderful to have you here. Now, our next webinar will be at the end of the last Wednesday of September, which is the 26th of September. It's a super surprise webinar, and I'm not able to give out any details for it yet. But presumably you're all signed up to the CBAA e-news, which you're able to sign up no matter what page of the CBAA website you go to. It is at the very bottom of that page. I see some people there are putting in how they got caught in this industry. Emma Ramsey says, I got roped in by a friend to get on air, and 15 years later still love community radio. On behalf of Community Radio, Emma Ramsey, it loves you back. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. Thanks to Emma Couch from the Community Media Training Organisation. That's cmto.org.au if you want to find out more. Technorama.org.au if you want to. Is that where you sign up for the soldering webinar for next week, John? Geez, I'll bet it is. I would certainly suggest anyone with a technical bent who's there in community broadcasting, go and get involved with that wonderful group. And of course, I've just got to say thank you once again to Christy for all of her fine work here this evening. Thank you so much. I will be sure to give you a call as soon as I'm back in the office early next week, and profusely thank you once again. So wonderful to have you involved in this. And all of our wonderful people here. Bill, keep soldering on. All right, you win for the evening, mate. Thanks very much, everyone. We will talk to you again very, very soon. This is Danny Chifley on behalf of the CBAA, saying thanks so much for joining us. CBAA webinars shall return.